HOPEtalks, cancer ideas worth spreading.
Hi, my name is Andraka, and my story really began when I was 13 when a close family friend who was like an uncle to me actually passed away from pancreatic cancer. And when the disease hit so close to home, I knew I needed to learn more. So using tools such as Google and Wikipedia, I just found a variety of statistics on the cancer, and what I found really shocked me. You see, over 85% of all pancreatic cancers are diagnosed late, when someone has less than a 2% chance of survival. And what was even more shocking was that the current method of testing for the cancer is this 6-year-old technique, but it also costs $800 per test and is grossly inaccurate, missing 30% of all cancers. Upon further research, I found why we haven't updated our current sensor in over 6 decades. And that's because when we're looking for the cancer, we're looking at your bloodstream, particularly for variations in protein levels. And while this sounds very straightforward, it's anything but. You see, you have liters and liters of blood, which is already abundant in thousands of different proteins. But you're looking for this tiny variation, this tiny amount of protein, which is next to impossible. It's like trying to find a needle in a sack of nearly identical needles. However, undeterred due to my teenage optimism, or how some people will label it complete and utter ignorance of the entire field of cancer research, persisted on, and I found a database of over 8,000 proteins that are found in your bloodstream when you have these cancers. And it was summer break, so I just shut myself in my room and researched all 8,000 of them. And finally, on the 4,000th try, I found one protein called mesothelin that could work. And mesothelin is just your ordinary run-of-the-mill type protein, unless you have pancreatic, ovarian, and lung cancer, in which case it's found at these very high levels in your bloodstream. But also, the most important thing is that it's found in the earliest stages of the disease, when someone has close to a 100% chance of survival. So now that I identified a protein that could signify the presence of the cancer, I then shifted my focus to actually detecting the cancer. On this big journey, I had one kind of epiphany moment, which was in the most unexpected places, high school biology class. I was listening to my biology teacher give us a lecture on antibodies, which are molecules that only react specifically to one protein, in this case the cancer biomarker. And then all of a sudden it hit me. You see, you can combine these two concepts. You take a network of nanotubes and weave these antibodies into it, such that you have a network that only reacts with one specific protein. But also, in the presence of that protein, it'll actually change how electricity flows through it, and thus I can see whether or not you have the cancer. As soon as I had this epiphany, I realized these networks of nanotubes are extremely flimsy, and since they're so delicate, they need to be supported. So I chose to use paper, and making a paper sensor of pancreatic cancer is about as simple as making chocolate chip cookies. You just start with some water, you pour in some nanotubes, add some antibodies, mix it up, take some paper, dip it, dry it, and then you can detect cancer. And then I realized I'm going to need a lab, and so I actually emailed 200 professors at Johns Hopkins University and the National Institute of Health, a 32-page behemoth of a document outlining each and every step of my procedure. And I sat back waiting for all these positive emails to pour in, and then I got 199 rejections. And I realized some professors aren't nearly as nice as their glowing profile pictures make them seem. However, eventually I got one positive email from Dr. Andraka at Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine, and I go in for this big interview, and after an hour-long interrogation of 28 PhDs plus the professor, I finally got the lab space I needed. And as soon as I started, I realized how poorly equipped I was to do this project. I mean, I knew nothing about working in a professional laboratory. So, first day I sneezed in my cancer cell culture. I also blew them up in the centrifuge. I mean, after 7 months, I screwed up every single imaginable scientific procedure. However, in the end, I created one small paper sensor that costs 3 cents and takes 5 minutes to run. So it's 168 times faster, over 26,000 times less expensive, and over 400 times more sensitive than our current method of detection. But also, one of the most important things is that I can detect the cancer in the earliest stages, when someone has close to a 100% chance of survival. So, in the next 2 to 5 years, this patent-pending sensor could potentially lift the once dismal pancreatic cancer survival rates from 5.5% to close to 100%, and do similar for ovarian and lung cancer. But it wouldn't stop there, because you can switch out that antibody and detect an entirely different protein, ranging from Alzheimer's to other forms of cancer, even HIV/AIDS and heart disease. The possibilities are literally endless. Through this journey, I learned one very important lesson, that through the internet, really anything is possible. theories can be shared, and you don't have to be a college professor with multiple degrees to have your ideas valued. So imagine if a 15-year-old who couldn't quite know what a pancreas was could find a new way to detect pancreatic cancer. Just imagine what you could do.